Imagine waking up one morning with the quiet realization that your income has finally crossed into what society calls comfortable. Your salary covers rent or mortgage, groceries, transportation, school fees, a few subscriptions, and perhaps a vacation once a year. From the outside, this looks like stability. It looks like arrival. Yet when you open your banking app at the end of the month, the remaining balance feels strangely familiar. Not desperate, not catastrophic, but never meaningfully ahead. The number resets again and again, as if your financial life is running on a treadmill calibrated precisely to your earnings. This is not a failure of discipline. It is not a lack of ambition. It is something far more structural. It is what we can call the middle-class income trap. The middle-class income trap does not emerge from low income. It emerges from moderate income combined with moderate obligations that expand in proportion to earnings. When income rises from subsistence level to stability, expenses rarely remain static. Housing shifts from shared space to private space. Transportation shifts from necessity to comfort. Food shifts from basic calories to convenience and quality. Insurance expands. School choices change. Social expectations subtly adjust. None of these decisions are irrational in isolation. In fact, many of them are prudent. The trap forms not because of extravagance, but because each incremental improvement quietly becomes permanent. Psychologically, this happens because humans adapt to new baselines with remarkable speed. Behavioral economists refer to this as hedonic adaptation. When your income rises, your sense of normal recalibrates almost immediately. The apartment that once felt spacious begins to feel standard. The car that once felt aspirational becomes routine. The vacation that once felt luxurious becomes expected. Income growth produces temporary emotional elevation, but expenses create long-term structural commitments. The emotional reward fades. The financial obligation remains. Now consider the mathematics underneath this pattern. Imagine a household earning $60,000 annually. After taxes, perhaps $48,000 remains. Fixed costs, housing, utilities, insurance, transportation, consume $30,000. Variable necessities, food, healthcare, schooling, consume another $12,000. That leaves $6,000 annually, or $500 per month, for savings, investing, or flexibility. On paper, that appears responsible. Now imagine income rises to $80,000. After taxes, perhaps $62,000 remains. But housing upgrades increase annual cost to $36,000. Transportation improves. Insurance premiums rise with asset value. Lifestyle quality improves modestly. Fixed and variable costs climb to $54,000. The new surplus becomes $8,000 annually, or about $667 per month. Income increased by $20,000, yet available margin increased by only $2,000. This is the core mechanical problem. Income scales linearly. Obligations scale structurally. The more stable your life becomes, the more your expenses become fixed rather than flexible. Fixed expenses are psychologically invisible because they are normalized. You do not renegotiate your rent every month. You do not reconsider school tuition quarterly. These become background constants in your financial equation. The middle-class trap is not about overspending on luxury. It is about accumulating irreversible commitments. Historically, this pattern intensified after the expansion of consumer credit in the late 20th century. As mortgages became more accessible and financing extended across vehicles, appliances, and education, households were able to convert future income into present consumption. This created a perception of affordability that was mathematically dependent on steady income growth. The system did not require recklessness, it required confidence in continuity. When wages plateau but fixed obligations remain, the trap tightens. There is also a subtle identity component. When someone transitions from lower income to middle income, their social circle often shifts. Expectations shift with it. Colleagues dine in certain places. Friends enroll children in particular schools. Professional environments signal status through subtle markers: clothing, neighborhoods, technology. None of these signals are explicitly mandated, yet deviation feels socially costly. Humans are not purely rational calculators. We are social organisms calibrating belonging. The trap deepens because financial decisions are intertwined with identity preservation. Mathematically, the trap can be expressed through a simple ratio: fixed expenses divided by after-tax income. When this ratio exceeds a certain threshold, often around 70 to 80%, financial resilience becomes fragile. A single disruption, such as medical cost, job interruption, or interest rate increase, forces borrowing rather than adjustment. In lower income situations, expenses are often minimal but flexible. In higher wealth situations, assets generate cash flow. In the middle, expenses are high, but assets are not yet substantial enough to offset them. That is the structural vulnerability zone. Compounding further complicates the picture. If a household invests $500 per month at a modest annual return, the long-term growth over decades becomes meaningful. But if lifestyle adjustments reduce investable surplus by even $200 per month, the compounding trajectory shifts dramatically over 20 or 30 years. The difference is not visible in a single year. It is visible across decades. The trap operates slowly, which makes it psychologically tolerable and mathematically significant. There is also the phenomenon of income volatility, masked by fixed expense rigidity. Salaried professionals often assume stability because paychecks arrive predictably. However, industries shift, skills depreciate, health changes, and economic cycles recur. When fixed expenses are optimized for peak earning years rather than average lifetime income, the household becomes dependent on uninterrupted performance. This dependency converts employment into a structural requirement rather than a strategic choice. Zooming out systemically, the middle-class income trap reflects an economic architecture built on consumption continuity. Housing markets rely on buyers stretching toward affordability ceilings. Education systems price toward what financed households can tolerate. Subscription models convert discretionary spending into recurring revenue streams. None of this is inherently malicious. It is simply how growth-oriented economies function. But at the individual level, it creates a narrow band where income growth sustains systems rather than builds independent capital. Escaping the trap does not require extreme austerity or radical withdrawal from society. It requires understanding thresholds. The first threshold is control of fixed expenses. When housing, transportation, and insurance are structured below what lenders approve rather than at the maximum approved level, margin expands quietly. The second threshold is asset accumulation sufficient to cover a meaningful portion of fixed costs. When investments generate even partial coverage of housing or utilities, psychological pressure shifts. The third threshold is optionality, where income becomes a tool rather than a necessity for survival. The identity shift is subtle but powerful. Instead of viewing raises as opportunities to expand lifestyle, they can be viewed as opportunities to reduce dependency. Instead of measuring success through visible consumption, success can be measured through reduced fragility. This is not a moral argument. It is a structural one. When fixed expenses grow slower than income, compounding begins to operate in your favor rather than against you. The middle-class income trap persists because it feels like progress. Each step upward is rational. Each decision is defensible. Yet collectively, they create a life calibrated to earnings rather than resilience. The system rewards participation. It does not automatically reward margin. Recognizing this distinction is the beginning of agency. In the end, the trap is less about how much you earn and more about how much of your income is permanently spoken for. Wealth is not defined only by salary level, but by the proportion of your time that is financially negotiable. When obligations consume most of your future income, you are stable but constrained. When margin expands, even slowly, you begin to move from maintenance toward accumulation. And that shift, quiet and incremental, is where structural freedom begins.